Hi everyone! In my last teaching video, I showed you all how to read music, specifically how to identify the letter of each note. Today, I want to expand on that and show you guys how to figure out where each note actually corresponds to on the piano or keyboard. This is important because, as you may know, the letters do repeat on the piano. For example, there are many C's, many D's, many E's, and so forth. So when we see a musical note and we are able to identify the letter, how do we know which key it corresponds to exactly on the piano or keyboard? That's what today's video is going to be about. So here I'm just showing you guys the piano, my piano actually. And the easiest way to figure out which key a note corresponds to is to use a landmark. Now, the easiest landmark, obviously, is going to be middle C, which is right here on my piano. If you guys remember me explaining in one of my previous videos, middle C can be found if you count the fourth C starting from the left of the piano. So this is my very first C. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the fourth C, starting from the left side of the piano, is always going to be your middle C, assuming that your piano or keyboard is a full-length 88-key keyboard. Does that make sense? Yeah, so the easiest landmark is going to be middle C. If you guys remember from my other videos, you will know that this is how we draw middle C in the treble clef, and this is how we draw middle C in the bass clef. Although they are placed in different parts of the staff, like for treble clef, middle C is found below the staff, and for bass clef, it is above the staff. They actually still correspond to the same key, which is middle C right here. Okay, so if you can memorize where middle C is in both the clefs, then you should be able to figure out where all the other notes correspond to on the piano or keyboard. Let's go through a few examples so that I can illustrate what exactly I am talking about. Okay, so as you can see here, I've drawn like a very mini keyboard, as well as a few notes in the treble clef. The pink note here is our middle C, which is going to correspond to the middle C that I've drawn on this mini little keyboard here. Okay, so remember this pink C here is supposed to be middle C. Okay, it represents our middle C on the piano. So if you remember how to read music, then you will know that this note here is identified as E. But is it going to be this E or that E? Well, if we take a look at the distance between middle C and this E that we have here, we can see that the distance isn't very far. And so it makes sense that on the real piano or keyboard, that this E would also be close to middle C. Now, we can also see that the note is above middle C, which means it's not going to be anything below middle C. It's going to be one of the E's that is above middle C, okay? Not below, because we can see that on the staff, it is higher than middle C. Because it is also relatively close to middle C, it's not going to be very far away where the E is all the way up here. It's going to be this E that is also close to middle C on the piano or keyboard. So this E here is actually going to match with that E over there. And if I go back to my actual piano, if my middle C is here, then that means that that E that I was just talking about is going to be this one over here, and not the next one that is higher, that is actually kind of far from middle C. Let's take a look at the next example, okay? So here, if you, again, remember from my notes reading video, you will be able to identify this note as a C. However, you can see that this C here is drawn very differently from that middle C all the way down here. Not only that, but it's also placed a lot higher on the staff compared to middle C. So we know that this definitely can't be that. We know that it is higher than middle C and also higher than this E. And so this C must be this one over here. If I go back to my piano, middle C is here. That higher C that we just saw is going to be all the way up here. Okay, it's going to be the next C up from middle C. Let's go back to our examples here. The last note that I've drawn on this page, Okay, if you remember from my notes reading video, you can figure out that this note is an E, just like that. These two notes are E's, but as you can tell, this E is not drawn the same as this one over here, which means it is also a different key on the piano and not this one. If we compare it to where middle C is, which is always going to be at the bottom of the staff for the treble clef, we can see that there is kind of like a big distance between middle C and this E here. So it wouldn't make sense for this E to be that one because this E is close to middle C. We can also tell that this E is going to be higher than that one because it is placed higher on the staff. We also know that this E is going to be close to the C that we had just identified over here. And so it must follow that this E is this one up there and not that one. If I go back to my piano now, if my middle C is here and the high C that we identified is here, then it would make sense that the E we were just talking about is up here, above that higher C. Okay, so now let's take a look at some examples using bass clef notes. Again, I have middle C highlighted in pink. Okay, so this is middle C in the bass clef, and we're gonna say that this pink C here is middle C on the little mini keyboard. Okay, so again, if you remember from my note reading video, you should be able to identify this note as an A. So we know that it is an A that is below the middle C because it's drawn lower on the staff compared to where the middle C is. We can also see that the distance between this middle C and this A is not very big. And so it wouldn't make sense for this A to be all the way down here where it is far from middle C. Instead, we can say that this note corresponds with this key on our little mini keyboard, which is close to the middle C over here. The distance is not very big. So we go and look at the real piano. I have my middle C here, and that A that we were just talking about is going to be over here, very close to middle C. Taking a look back at our examples, now we're going to talk about this one here. So if you remember from my notes reading video, you should be able to identify this note as a C. But again, we can tell that it is not the same as middle C because it's not drawn the same way, and we can also see that it is lower than middle C. So if we take a look at where middle C is, we have to find the one that is lower, and that's gonna be down here. Okay, so taking a look back at the real piano, this is my middle C. The C we were just talking about is going to be the next one down over here. Now, let's take a look at the very last example that I have. So, we know that this note is an A, just like this, but it is drawn in a different part of the staff, and we can tell that it is lower than this A that we had identified before. We can also see that it is lower than the C that we just talked about, but that it is also relatively close to that C and not very far from it. So if this C is all the way down here, then it would make sense that this A is going to be the A that's right below that C. So again, going back to the real piano, my middle C is here. Then the C that we were identifying before is going to be there. And this low A that we have here is going to be the A that is right below the C that I was just playing. So hopefully you guys have a better understanding now of how to figure out which key a musical note corresponds to on the piano or keyboard. This is actually a super common confusion amongst piano students. Oftentimes they'll be able to identify the musical note, but they won't be able to correctly identify which key on the piano or keyboard that note corresponds to. Okay, so hopefully this video kind of helps clear up that confusion a little bit. Remember, always use middle C as a landmark and compare all the other notes to middle C. Okay, figure out whether it is higher than middle C, lower than middle C, and also figure out whether it is close to middle C or far away from middle C. Hopefully this kind of cleared any sort of confusion that you may have regarding this matter. Let me know if you guys found this helpful or not. I'm very open to constructive criticism. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos in the future. Thumbs up this video, comment down in the comment section below, and as usual, I will see you all in my next video. Bye!